Hello everyone, my name is Zijun Qin and I am a master's student in TESOL program at American University. So today the topic of my presentation is how language attitudes towards linguistic varieties and teachers' expectation impact English teachers' experience in China. So before I start, I want to ask you a question first is what is standard English to you? So imagine that you're a teacher that have taught English several years and English is your first language. And one day, one of your students come to you and say that, hey, professor, I don't think your English is standard. I want to learn more about standard English. How do you feel about that? So this actually happened in one of my colleagues, and his name is Rick, and he's from Jamaica. He had been teach English for 10 years and he has lived in China for 14 years. Basically, he is a very well-educated English language teacher. And from the interview and like the conversation with him, I realized that he was a very experienced teacher and very confident in his teaching philosophy. However, he still found many challenges in his initial teaching because the students say something to him. At first, he taught English speaking, but part of his students questioned his qualifications simply because his Jamaican accent. Some students consider his accent to be incorrect, and like some of them even cannot, like sometimes even cannot understand him. Like some parents had even told school officials that he would like to transfer their children to the classes where Canadian teachers taught English. This made Rick very frustrated, and he felt very confused that English was his first language. So how could his mother tongue be considered wrong? Even though this was so unreasonable for him, he finally chose to teach English writing instead of teaching English speaking. So he gave up. How do we understand that this arise, or if this is just a case of him or just a school, or this is more interesting and indicative of the ways of understanding how students misunderstanding who might be effective teachers. And if it is that, how might we be able to examine the underlying causes of what his particular case is about? Therefore, like in this presentation, I will talk about basically two questions. The first is why students in China has this kind of language attitudes towards English varieties, and how the attitudes impact Rick's teaching experience. So the first is language attitudes towards language varieties. I would say that Rick's experience improved the confluence of two aspects. The first broad idea is some students lack understanding of dialect issues and a misunderstanding about issues of better or worse English with the aspect of language varieties. So the first is the lack of knowledge about linguistic varieties. Their study showed that the use and understanding of English may affect people's attitudes towards English accent. So they studied 3 groups of students who come from Malaysia, Japan, and South Korea. So they found that Malaysians appreciated more their own diversity in English, and that their adherence to native English speakers was not as strong as that of the other two Asian groups. So that's basically because Malaysians still use English extensively in informal settings. Like this unique language environment in Malaysia may enhance Malaysian students' understanding of the functional value of the native Malaysian accent English, resulting in their lower dependence on the native speakers' English. But in China, in Japan, or South Korea, the emphasis on single English form in English education, and like that made the students tend to want to behave like so-called native English speakers, and they lack of awareness of English diversity. And also, there's another study showed that the students who had personal experience in English-speaking countries, they tend to have more personalized, specific attitudes towards English accent, and they have fewer stereotypes than those who did not. So obviously in China, students don't have that kind of like experience, live in English speaking countries, and also they actually like don't have that much opportunities, or they don't tend to use English outside the class. So that we can see of that is like one of the reasons for the bias of English accents was because of the lack of understanding of the current state of English in the world. So therefore, it can be seen that students' lack of knowledge about linguistic varieties was indeed the reason for their thoughts about Rick's accent. Another kind of reason is that they may misunderstand about what is the better or worse English. So actually there's no best and standard variety of English, right? But still many people believe that certain kind of English was advanced. The reason for this phenomenon may be the unitary guidance of English in the process of education. So in China, the majority of English materials and teaching orientation also focus on the American and British English. Their listening materials, for example, is all about like American accent or British accent. So this is what they have learned. So student may see that as a correct English because that is what appears in their textbook. So it was not difficult to understand why Rick's students thought his Jamaican accent was not standard, is because probably they never heard that kind of accent before, or they never heard that kind of accent from the textbook or from the listening material that they have like listened. So those two are like the main reason that students have certain language attitude towards English varieties. And another point I want to talk about is why they learn English in China. So this is another point that may relate to their attitude. So here I talk about one of the motivation called the instrumentality promotion measuring. So those kind of instrumental motivation is more referred to the like tool to achieve personal success goals, such as like achieving higher proficiency in English in order to earn more money or find a better job. So as you know, like China has is a rapidly developing country that has undergone major changes in recent years. So this kind of like economical changes have greatly increased the importance of learning English in China. Over the past decade, the development of English courses in public schools and private English schools had exploded across China. Like in China, there's number of English learners was twice that of US citizens, actually. Like in terms of educational background, like China's education system is like extremely exam oriented. And English is one of the main subjects in college entrance exam. In China, like mastering English was a must, like the skill that they must have for everyone who wants to compete in the global market. And most like multinational companies in China and many Chinese companies required the skill of English. And actually those kind of companies or some positions, they are all related to the country that is like developed, or like how to say, like developed countries like America, like UK, like Canada, Australia, those kind of countries. So the students who wants to like get job there, or want to have opportunity to work there, they have to learn English. And there's something in their mind is like they have to learn English like the people in those kind of countries. So it was like not difficult to find that one of the main motivations of learning English in China like was instrumental motivation. And because Chinese learners were very concerned about their future jobs and the practicability of English when they get a higher like salary. So learning English was like practical because it can promote their social mobility by gaining like opportunities that required English skills, for example, like job promotion or something. So how those kind of factors can impact Rick's teaching experience? So the first is how the instrumental goal of view English as a tool for economic and scientific advancement conflicted together people's attitude towards variety of English they associated with that achievement. That created a situation in which people who do not speak those particular dialects, that especially those people who did not look like the stereotypical English speakers that Chinese students expected to have in the classroom of those dialects, will be subject to the kind of like discrimination. And that drove Rick to teach writing classes instead of speaking classes, because in the speaking class, the difference between his dialect and the standard the student and their parents expected were most visible. that experience can be understood more broadly as the interaction of mistaken attitude that people have about language and the instrumental nature of Chinese students' attitudes towards English language acquisition. So this instrumental nature led them to want the language or English they associate with the goal, which was mainstream kinds of English, like British English and American English. That made them only value models of that kind of English and the instructors from there, right? So Rick's English mismatched intentionally expectation and goals of students and parents, and that was like created his dilemma. But ironically, the idea of idealized native speaker like was essentially irrelevant, and we can learn from both native and non-native speaking models, or like we can learn like for native speaking models, we can learn not just like mainstream models. In fact, the world of global English was not dominated by more English speakers as a global language, so-called like native speakers. And also, there's several studies showed that like even like native English speaker teachers, like they are fluent, fun, how to say, like accurate, but also the students consider the like non-native English speaker teachers to be organized, approachable, motivating, inspiring, and understandable. Because they was like those kind of like non-native English speaker was a English learner before, and which may help learners be regarded as advanced teachers of English skills. So as English teachers, what we can do is to make students aware of the language varieties and encourage students to have a positive attitude towards this diversity. And this single teaching method of model may lead to students' mono thinking, which is not conducive to students' language learning. I want to emphasize here is like there's a lot of classes that only teach one or two kind of English, or only emphasize one or two kind of English. I cannot change that by myself because this is a fact, this is a phenomenon around us. But I want to, like, I'm here, want to let others know is like, as a English language teacher and also me, myself as a language learner, we should be open-minded to the variety of languages. And also we as a teacher need to let students know they don't have to behave or speak like a native speaker or mainstream native speaker. As long as they can use English to do something, they can use English as a tool to communicate. And that is, as long as they can do that, they're good. That is the main reason of learning English. And also I want to emphasize is that when we design the lesson plan, or when we choose materials for teaching, we need to take the language varieties into consideration. We can, when we do the, for example, the listening course or listening task, we can include more than just American accent or British accent. We can include more and let students to feel there's still a lot of countries, a lot of people besides the mainstream English-speaking countries that like they're still use English. And I will also encourage students to use English, to speak English, encourage them, not just like let them to behave like a native English speaker, which is, I think is not an appropriate way to do that. So I think it's really important to help students to develop the critical language awareness. And also for the English language teachers, we need to be conscious about the materials that we developed or included in our teaching, because that may impact students' learning and students' attitude towards that language. And that is my presentation, and thank you for watching and listening.